Welcome to the podcast. My name is Douglas Gabriel. I'm here with John Barnwell. Hello, John.
Hello, Douglas. It's such a pleasure to be here amongst this company of souls that are attempting to try and find their way as spirits of freedom and love. I mean, that's quite a nice goal that Rudolf Steiner has set for those that are paying attention.
Yes, absolutely. Both the living and the dead. And he oftentimes says, you should start a meeting off inviting the dead to come participate. And when you are thinking archetypal thoughts, the dead are participating as well as the angelic realm. So I'm terribly excited because this is a video we're doing about the book that has just been written, finished, perfectly edited and proofread by yourself. And now we are adding it as the fifth book to this series that we're doing. And I love the cover. Isn't that cover fantastic? Chuck did that for us, and he's going to do some more covers. Chuck Andrade, one of the best leisurists in the world. And this book is so exciting for a variety of reasons, not only because of the content, but also because of some things that you added, like John, you may not know, John is the master chart maker for anthroposophy in the Western Hemisphere. So if you're lucky, and we're lucky, he throws a bunch of charts in the back of these. And this book is just really, I'm going to say this, and my producer's going to probably strike it from the video, but we are on the fifth book. First book, that's where we came from and where we're at right now. This is where we're going. This is how to get through it. And this is what's on the other side. But the book that we're doing now is the book of the whole thing. I realized this as I was sitting here looking at them. We started because this was Tyler's idea. She said, we need to write these books that are thin because nobody wants to approach a thick anthroposophic book. Because why? It breaks your brain to try to read it. So thin books on a certain topic where you reveal the whole thing, don't hold back, and give it for beginners to the deepest anthroposophists in the world. And because I worked with the Monastic Club and so many anthroposophists throughout the world for so long, I've been able to bounce these ideas off of people. And I basically took 30 major questions that I was getting as a teacher trainer, as a Waldorf teacher, as an anthroposophist, and said, well, we need to answer these questions. And so we answered the biggest questions there are. But to attempt to do this, as we said in the last video, it takes some real gumption. It takes some real hubris to think that we can approach these topics and actually comprehensively do them. We can't. That's the reason we had to make so many books. And each of these books, as John was pointing out previously, that a single book of Rudolf Steiner's, for instance, Rudolf Steiner literally said, if you took the philosophy of freedom and had no other book, you could arrive at all of anthroposophy, all of spiritual science, all on your own after that book, if you understood its content. Or he said, if you understood all 4 mystery dramas, he wrote 4 mystery dramas, 4 plays. Understand them all, you understand all of it. He said about a number of different books and things that he said. Well, that's true, but it really depends upon what you need. And what you need, most people said, how do we get through this apocalypse we're in? And we said, is our answer through the research of 40 years or more, basically realizing that the second coming has already happened. And you don't have to get through the apocalypse because you are in the apocalypse. And right now, Rudolf Steiner said that we can have the end of all time could happen now accidentally as things get accelerated by the adversarial forces. But the point is that if you understand all of these things, then you can actually somewhat relax. And that's what this book does. It says, where did we come from? Where are we at? Where are we going? But what is, like the content of some of these other books, what is it we're aiming at? That's angels. So we wrote a book on how to become angels. What are we fighting now? Well, that's the incarnation of Ahriman, the occult annihilation of the soul. And so these books are written to give Tyler exactly what she asked for, which was an accessible way to Rudolf Steiner's teachings, but comprehensive, not just another, surface approach, but something deep. So today we're going to go deeper into the questions that you find in the second coming of Christ And the only way I know to do this is to tell a story, because I'm a Waldorf teacher. But this directly connects to Waldorf education. In the book, The Second Coming of Christ in the Etheric Realm, I put a whole section of how you see the I am, the ego. It's called the ego, but people don't like the word ego because it has also negative connotations. But the I am of that child, how, as a teacher, do you replicate from grade 1 through grade 8, actually grade 7, 7 years where the etheric body shows you everything it knows and you need to feed it everything it needs? Just an impossible task. That's all. He gives this to Waldorf teachers, but he also says that that's the only path of one of the few paths, but one of the only paths available in our time for a true spiritual scientific initiation, and that is to understand the etheric world. Now, to understand the etheric world, it goes far beyond anything that you can just grasp easily. But we have a book called The Eternal Ethers, which I had to create to give to teachers before I could teach them the curriculum of Waldorf education, or else they wouldn't understand it, because they'd ask so many questions to make it work. So this book, The Second Coming of Christ, that we're working on, it's now out on Amazon, and that we worked on so hard for so many years, is basically a distillation of exactly how to develop your I am. Because how would you do that? You'd simply mimic, you would copy, and in the realm of spiritual economy, it's all about imprinting a seal of the Christ on your etheric body or your astral body, or weaving in the etheric body of Christ into your etheric body, weaving in the astral body into your astral body, connecting into the sentient soul, the intellectual soul, the consciousness soul. Those are vehicles, the 9 vehicles of the human being that Christ perfected. Christ came all the way down through the hierarchy to a human, went all the way to the core of the earth, redeemed the earth, and is risen up and resurrected, ascended, quickly went back to heaven to clear the path, came back, and now is in the etheric realm. But if you don't understand, you can't understand the fact that Steiner said Christ appearing in the etheric realm right now is the second most important event in all of human spiritual evolution and in human history. The mystery of Golgotha was the first. That's all well and good. Most of us can't understand the mystery of Golgotha, and we give you the challenge. And Tyler and I put into the Gospel of Sophia the real key in an initiation to this. If you're one of the people who wants to get Christianity simply through the heart, read the Gospel of Sophia. It's a self-initiation. You lead yourself through it. You don't need anyone, and Sophia comes to you. And this has been found to be true with everyone who's walked through that path. It's a trilogy. It's 3 books. But what it's doing is it's giving you an initiation to show you that really you're an angel. That was your intent. But if you don't know that, how can you grow into that? So as you watch a child, Rudolf Steiner gave all these astounding indications, and many of them to Waldorf teachers that he gave nowhere else. And of course, I'm a Waldorf teacher trainer, and have been for decades, and trained hundreds and thousands of teachers ultimately, but certainly hundreds, if not thousands, of Waldorf teachers. And what it's all about is what even my teachers at the Waldorf Institute didn't understand. Rudolf Steiner says that as you look at the child, and the child, because they're in the mother school before age 7. So if you look at the child in the mother school, when they're with their mother's etheric body, the child learning to stand upright, speak, and think. And now he gives other descriptions of this, but that's the quick and easy way to understand it. Standing upright, speaking, thinking. As you see the child do that in the first 3 years of life, you are watching the etheric body of Christ from the realm of spiritual economy, because we all go through a certain path. And that path is fantastic. Scientists will tell you we learn more in those first 3 years of life than we learn for the rest of our life, period. Much, much more. And we do it all through imitation, by simply imitating the models that we have, standing upright, speaking, and thinking. And to me, that's the greatest thing that you can do, is watch a child conceive a child, watch a child be born, catch that child, be there during those 3 years, and then watch them as they, for the first 7 years, you're looking at something the physical body. Second 7 years, you're looking at the etheric body. Third 7 years, you're looking at the astral body. Then the ego body comes in. The ego is not really a body. So these things, as you look at them, the child does what's called ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny. In other words, the development of the individual recapitulates the development of humanity. So as the child's learning to stand upright, speak and think, go learn what it does up till age 7 from the mother school, and then goes in, and then if that Waldorf teacher gives the child living imaginations that are directly connected to archetypal truths, they are communing with angels. And we call them in our books, our book on this is called The Eternal Curriculum for Wisdom Children. These are wisdom children. If they have a real, true initiate as their Waldorf teacher, who is delivering the most difficult curriculum anyone could ever be saddled with, and you are watching this happen as a truly reverent person with wonder and awe, that child replicates the entire development of humanity. Now, some of us get stuck at stages, and some of us go past stages and skip stages. But the point is, there is a path. It's called the divine plan. And when we're talking about the second coming of Christ in the etheric, that is the fifth. This can get confusing. It is the fifth cosmic deed of Christ, of cosmic Christ, who lived in the body of Jesus of Nazareth for a little over 3 years. But that body of Jesus of Nazareth, we have to explain. So if you're going to give a biography of Christ, it's also the biography of humanity. And it's the biography of a child you're watching grow right in front of you. And I've done this over and over again and watched this. And it is an astounding thing to realize the spiritual economy, how much of an economically wonderful decision that was, that all of us in our ether body get an ether body that is a perfect copy of the universe, including the planets and the stars and the sun and all the timing and the sequencing of all of this unfolding that happens. Some would call it, DNA, but of course that's just the material manifestation of a spiritual function. So the point is that when we tried to write this book, I remember calling up John and saying, John, I'm embarrassed. I have to tell you, I am trying to write the biography of the cosmic Christ, and I'm using the metaphor or the analogy or whatever you'd call it of the great I am and the small I am. Now, John did not laugh at me at that moment, but he could have. But I'm trying to get this across to literally Waldorf teachers, people fresh off the street who come in and try to understand anthroposophy, deep anthroposophists, and basically to carry on the work of Sergei Prokofiev and others like him, to take the work of Rudolf Steiner and keep it alive and not get caught up in all the accusations of weirdnesses that come along with Steiner being accused as being a cult of personality or a racist or a Nazi. These things are all silly. Anyone who studies these books that we're giving out there, and people, Tyler told me this morning, this person contacted her and said, we want to thank you for these books and what you're doing, because this is the first time I've studied anthroposophy all my life. This is the first time that I understood it. Don't feel like the Lone Ranger. This is the way that all anthroposophists feel. That's the reason we had to create the monastic club and so many anthroposophists, a network of us around the world who we have funny little names for. But these are people that we call when we say, John, as I did John the other day, John, when Christ's perfected vehicles were given to human beings in these 3 different stages of time, some to the etheric body, some to the astral, some were to the intellectual and the consciousness soul. Was it only Meister Eckhart and Johannes Tauler who had the consciousness soul, astral body, perfected vehicle of Christ? And John said, well, wait a second. And then he started reeling off, Augustine had an etheric perfected body. St. Francis had a perfected astral body. St. Patrick, St. Gala, St. Columba, they all had etheric bodies like St. Augustine, and that's the reason they were still messed up. So he starts reeling off this whole thing, right? No one in history has ever given us that information except Rudolf Steiner. But when you see it, as someone who literally studied these people, seriously studied these exact people as a path to the spirit, as I did when I studied comparative religions, it made perfectly good sense. So I had to go back and I had to refresh my whole memory on all of that stuff so we could finish this last book in the series.
Well, to understand that the comment about Meister Eckhart, where you said, well, so it was the consciousness soul that Meister Eckhart received. Well, that's a way of looking at it, because the consciousness soul is the level of self which comes to a full culmination of a potential culmination of the awareness of the I. But Rudolf Steiner specifically states that Meister Eckhart had the imprint of the I am of the Christ. And so, I mean, if you look at Johannes Thaler, who was associated with him, and Thaler was approached by this gentleman that some friends of his told him wanted to study with him, and he met this guy, Gutes friend vom Oberland, the friend from the highland is what he's referred to. And it didn't take too long for Thaler to realize this guy wasn't here to be a student of mine, he's my teacher. And the Gutes friend vom Oberland recommended Thaler that he not speak a word for a month. And so Thaler followed those instructions. And at the end of the month, he went to the cathedral and he gave his sermon, and people were fainting because the transformative power that he was able to gain as a result of literally absorbing himself into the power of Christ. And so there's a very profound level at which these things take place. You can go like with the writer for the rules of the Knights Templar, of which people that have read my works are quite familiar with, the Bernard of Clairvaux, Saint Bernard, right? And that Saint Bernard, Rudolf Steiner says that Saint Bernard did more healings than are talked about in the Bible that Christ did. And you have that certain potency at that time, see. And that was the period of the intellectual soul, the Middle Ages, and Rudolf Steiner also calls the intellectual soul the higher feeling soul. Well, we don't have that intensity of commitment within our realm of feelings to our activities to be able to, as effectively, normally, be able to have that kind of result. Although my family had a close relationship with Father Solanus, and he actually attended my great-grandfather's wake, where my great-grandfather passed away. He built all the cathedrals and churches in Detroit. And Solanus went up there in 5 minutes. My great-grandfather's saying, "Get me some water." He came back from the dead. So the potency is still there. It's just that our relationship to our vehicles has changed. We tend to be caught up in all of this abstract thinking that we do all the time. We think our thoughts are inside our head somehow. But yet, if you study what Rudolf Steiner says about the ancient Greeks, their experience of thinking was more the way in which your eyes function, that thinking was something that was happening to them as a result of the interactions with the spiritual world. So these things go through continual metamorphosis within a person's life, within history. And in these books, what we've tried to do is give you a roadmap so you can figure out where you are, where you came from, and where we're going to, but with the understanding that the mystery of Golgotha, Rudolf Steiner is very adamant about the point. It only happens one time. Christ only incarnates in a human body, a physical human body, one time. It's just like when you have a scale. There's only one fulcrum point. There isn't two. And so people that are predicting that the second coming is going to be that he's going to come and he's going to be some great political leader or something like that, that's exactly not what Rudolf Steiner is indicating. And furthermore, when somebody comes along like that, that's your good candidate for the Antichrist.
So true. The second coming is, it happens in many different ways for many different people. For Paul, it happened on the road to Damascus. He had the Damascus event. He saw Christ in the etheric. Right after Christ had died and resurrected and ascended, Christ was in the etheric realm of the earth. And anyone who is truly clairvoyant or a true initiate who was willing to suffer what it takes to witness that can witness that now. So we are in a time when it wasn't like the past. At first, it was just, Steiner says there's 4 periods. At first, there was the period of people who witnessed Christ. Well, they could tell people what they witnessed, and that's why it spread. This is all in the book, Principle of Spiritual Economy. And he says that Christianity spread because, first off, in the first period, Christ's physical body was there. But after that, what was around? The blood relics. And that literally became the legends of the Grail, because what was really left after Christ was Christ being in the inexhaustible chalice. In other words, in the realm of spiritual economy, in the realm of the super etheric, in the realm of Shambhala, so many different names. But that is where Christ, they call it the realm of the castle of the Grail, or the realm of the Holy Grail. Why? Because it's this chalice. What's in the chalice? Christ's blood. What's Christ's blood? Inexhaustible life. It is representation of his ego, and his ego willing to be completely selfless. And so that has made an imprint in not only the physical earth, but in the etheric earth. And so we can, when the time comes that we can look through the astral light, look through your own selfish desires, and see Christ in the etheric body of the earth. He has saved the earth from dying, and now he's saving the etheric realm from dying. But it is a pitched battle. And this is what the second coming is all about. Why does the second coming get most referenced through the book of Revelation of St. John the Divine? Not Thessalonians, not Matthew, not Luke, not the other places where Christ is talked about, is he will return in the cloud. Why are you looking here? He'll come from east to west. Everyone will see it. You can't miss this. Everyone is going to experience Christ in the etheric. Maybe only when you die. Or maybe when you have a vision, or when you're in prayer, or when you're meditating, or before you go to sleep at night, or in your dreams. There's many different ways to experience the power of Christ in the etheric. And that's what we're trying to get across in this book. I was talking earlier about looking at a child. That child is a garden of the etheric. So as you're looking at them from age 7 through 14, when the etheric body is the most active, you see the whole history of mankind. That's why in Waldorf education, we teach the whole history of mankind. But what we don't teach, and we should teach, is that when you stood upright, you spoke, and you thought, those were the gifts of the spiritual world. Later, Rudolf Steiner says when they come to school, we build what we teach them based upon that. That's writing, reading, and arithmetic. You see, standing upright, speaking, thinking, writing, reading, arithmetic. Why? Reading is connected to speech, and the writing is connected to the true movements that should be done through handwriting, not through typing and seeing things in print. So Waldorf has a different approach, because what we're trying to do is let the child fully incarnate all aspects that Christ wants to give them. And just like Father Solinus probably had some copy of the perfected vehicles of Christ, just like Christian Rosenkreuz did after the 16th century, or as John has pointed out, others even before him, we all have that ability now. We all are supposed to accept the imprint of Christ into our etheric body, actually technically into our physical, etheric, astral, and ego. But it'll probably come in through your ego first and work down on your astral body. And then when you can get down into a realm of literally initiation science, the realm of the etheric, then you can start to perceive Christ in his glory. Because at first, You're not going to. So all those people who received the perfected vehicles of Christ, part of it was completely unconscious. It wasn't their ego. It might not have been their astral body. It wasn't their intellectual soul or their consciousness soul. It was just their etheric body. So their etheric body told them the truth, and they directly experienced Christ through their etheric body. This happened also through the astral body with many artists and musicians and sculptors and painters and architects. So I like what Van Morrison says. His beloved told him, it's all in God. It is. It's all in God. Most of the books ever written were about what? God, love, Christ, any spiritual thing. That's the important books. The others, are superfluous to a degree because it's our working through our astral body. But if you know the true history of the biography of Christ, you know that now Christ has not given up on us, and he didn't just send the Comforter. He's here to walk in and to heal your wounds. He's here to give as many people as can receive it the Damascus event, witnessing him in the etheric, because once you do, your life is changed. He is here to heal the etheric, but materialism causes so much darkness when we die, because it's also the realm of Kamaloka, it's the realm of life spirit, it's the realm of Sambhogakaya, it's the realm of paranirvana. The realm of spiritual economy has many, many different realms, the realm of Shambhala. And so as you go into these realms at different times, whether through consciousness, meditation, ritual, vision, death, you're going to have a different experience depending upon what body you have attempted to take into that realm. But in the ancient times, they could directly experience Christ physically. After that, people like Augustine and Francis received it through their etheric, Patrick, Augustine and Patrick and Gallus and Columba and others received it through their etheric body. Later, Francis, and he literally says, Steiner says, many Dominicans received a weaving of the astral body of Christ into their astral body. Some didn't ascend as high as Eckhart and Tauler, but the Dominicans. So when you're looking at the scholastics, now he didn't specifically say Thomas Aquinas, but hello, he's the angelic doctor. Of course, he would have received maybe multiple copies of the perfected vehicles of Christ. So this isn't an uncommon experience. And what is so strange is that now, because Christ is the Lord of karma, the Lord of memory, the guardian of the threshold, he is there as the midwife of us ascending into being angels. Christ has so many deeds right now because why? We are his children. We are following in his template. And he will come to us sometimes when we're in desperate need, not because of spiritual advancement, because of desperate need. And so the point is this is happening now. And when it happens, if it happens in its full-fledged nature, you'll see Christ coming to you. But before you see Christ, in all the people that I ever dealt with who were overdosing, they first saw a tide, like an ocean rolling in, like a cloud of light. The most intense light they've ever experienced in their entire life. It's like they literally say, my eyes were burned out of my head as this light rolled forward. And then they felt warmth and they felt love. And then they heard a voice. And this voice was Christ. And literally told them, this voice said they were Jesus Christ and told them who to go to next to help them through the experience. So that happens to some people and they go psychotic. Because there's many different names for these illnesses, but the point is that there's people in psych wards who think that they're Jesus Christ. Well, perhaps they saw Jesus Christ, and in fact, in the future they are. And so we have to look at this from many different perspectives. So the people who say, I'm waiting for the rapture, don't worry, when you die, the rapture will come. But it may happen earlier if you happen to have grace and you are worthy and you have the right resonance. So that's what we're trying to make clear here. And if you don't believe in the etheric Christ, then look at a growing child. And if you don't believe in what we talked about, the way that we can receive these perfected vehicles of Christ, then I'm going to tell you a story in a minute, and it's going to be the 7 deeds of Christ and how that had to happen, because it's like a fairy tale. But as Navala said, history must become a fairy tale.
Yes, and out of my own personal biography. I mean, I have key events in my lifetime that have happened. Rudolf Steiner has been the only individual that has ever been able to shed some light. When I had an experience of that light you're talking about, it's in the Rig Veda. It says brighter than 1,000 suns. Well, I can attest to that. That the sun at noonday seems dim in comparison. But that being said, it has to do with not just that is there, but that you are prepared. It's all about preparing for a guest. You know, if you want Christ to come into your life, then perhaps you should set some things in order. Get your life organized so that you're not totally embarrassed, even though you're going to be embarrassed anyways, because we're all just unworthy sinners. And fortunately, he has grace, and that he is going to be able to bring us, and with the assistance of the paraclete or the comforter, this dynamic duo, so to speak, can give you a leg up to be able to enter into these levels of love. Essentially, what it is, as Buckminster Fuller said, love is the glue of the universe. And so that when you enter into coherence and you start to awaken to these things, unfortunately, it's often in times of the utmost turmoil that Christ decides to show up in your life. And Rudolf Steiner speaks about that. He says at the low point in an individual's life, that's when they have that experience. It doesn't have to be that way. It's entirely up to Christ. It's not up to you. All you can do is prepare yourself for that event, which will happen eventually, but it will become a matter of how prepared one is for it. And there was a book that was very, very popular uh, in Europe. It was called The Imitation of Christ, and it's by Thomas à Kempis, who's obviously somebody who had gone through some of the spiritual economy within the realm of the astral, because that's the whole issues. There's different issues pertaining to the astral body than there are to the etheric body. With the etheric body, Rudolf Steiner said that all your thinking, that is centered around your etheric body. And so when you go to sleep at night, your etheric body and your physical body stay on the bed, and your astral body and the ego take off. So that when you come back and you have your dreams, that's the reintegration of your astral body with the etheric body that's taken place. And that a dream that may seem like it lasted for hours is just a very, very brief event as in terms of actual time, but you experience it because you're coming out of a realm of duration. You're coming out of a timeless realm. And so there's so many fascinating episodes that one can go through as you explore these understandings that, you know, personally, I don't know why anybody would want to do most anything else to spend their time. And of course, you got to take care of all your duties in your day-to-day life. You still got to chop wood, carry water, so to speak. But that being said, it's so rewarding to be able to work on these magisterial compilations that Douglas has put together over the years, and take them and try and craft them into a book form, so as to make it easier for people to understand the comprehensive nature of Rudolf Steiner's work, because there literally is no more difficult subject. I could say that with absolute certainty. And there is no more prolific subject. You know, he's got 36 and a half feet of books to work from. And so you'll find, if you get involved in the anthroposophic community, that there's different groups of people that have centered around particular lecture cycles. They spend most of their time on just a few different lecture cycles, but to take a panoramic view of the whole body of work, it comes up with many surprises, because he could be like, the other day, they reprinted a series on art. And Douglas and I were talking about it because it's in the series of art that deals with some of the most important issues regarding the understanding of the mystery of Sophia. And you'd think it would be in a book that was dealing more specifically with that type of a subject, but no, it's in a book on art. And so you never know where you're going to find it in Rudolf Steiner's work. It's always an exploration and never a disappointment.
That's for sure. Sometimes a little frustrating. I remember throwing Study of Man across the room a few times. Saying, what is he talking about? This, I have to change everything I ever understood or believed if I believe this. So then I had to go out and test it. And that's what we're trying to do. So essentially, this is kind of the bottom line. The bottom line is Christ came from the Trinity, which is above even the celestial sphere of the stars. He came from the unmanifest into the manifest. And he came specifically to work through the realm of the hierarchy, the middle realm that he's responsible for, and even more specifically through the Elohim. And then that is usually is headquartered on the sun. And so it's called the Mother Lodge of the Sun that Christ works out of. And that controls the other major 6 planets, but it also controls the relationship of the sun to the stars and to the realm beyond the stars. And so when you're talking about the biography of Christ, this is what you're talking about. And so you can put it in real simple terms. Christ came from the unmanifest into the sun, and from the sun down to the earth. And now he's going back towards the sun and taking us with him. And we're turning from a planet into a sun. Our heart is becoming a radiant sun. And eventually we will be somewhat of a microcosm of the macrocosm of the sun, right? So all we have to do is follow the lead. As a matter of fact, we know through Steiner's astronomy that the sun is passing in space before us to clean it out and pulling us behind it. Now scientists agree that that is what's happening, but not going to change the science books. So if that's the case, then if you stand on the earth in your superconsciousness and you look out towards Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, that's the past. And he has names for that. And then you look towards the sun and you see Venus, Mercury, and Vulcan's invisible. Then that's the future. So we're not going back to the sun per se. We're going back to a transformation of the sun that goes once we go through 3 more steps. So that's the big picture, you see. Now, that goes beyond even being an angel, beyond being an archangel. That's going into the realm of the archai, a being of time. So space will have to be dissolved. Time will have to be dissolved. And even what you call your I am, to go into a cosmic I am, you also have to dissolve that also. This is not what people want to do. We're humans. We want to give our little I am everything that it wants. And no matter how poisonous it is, or what, as long as it tastes good in our mouth and we feel good about it, that seems that, so nobody's really willing to do the work to rise up into these realms. And right now, the new time spirit is called, it used to be called Archangel Michael, now called the Archai Michael, and the Vidar has taken his place. But there's another, that's the being, there's another being below him called the Nathan Soul, and that's where I'm going to go next. So we'll see if John stays awake through this one. This is, I have to tell this as a fairy tale. I know no other way to tell this. So when you look and you want to defeat Lucifer in your astral body, you need to have the Nathan Soul help you. Now you're going to say, who's that? Well, if you're an anthroposophist, you know the Nathan Soul is the being who is called Jesus of Nazareth. Now, this is debatable, especially recently. I've come across some Steiner references that really made me have to question all of this. But the point is that most of the time he will tell you that Jesus of Nazareth was the Nathan Soul. Now, there's 2 different lineages, the Luke, and that's the Luke child, and the Matthew child. So there were 2 Jesus children. And this is critical to know, and was known by the Masons and by the Rosicrucians and many others in the past, that there were 2 Jesus children who at age 12 merged together. Now, when we talked about the perfected bodies of Christ, Steiner calls that the complications of reincarnation. So most of the time you get those bodies woven into your body when you're reincarnating right before you were born, and you come through the realm of spiritual economy and they weave that into you. So we're talking about reincarnation in a way that is rather complicated, and you need to open your mind to be able to even perceive these things, conceive these things. So in the beginning, when Christ was with the Elohim on the sun and he created human beings, as you know, in the Bible, there are two different gardens of Eden, aren't there? One where the man is a man and a woman, where Adam is a man and a woman in one body. And the next one where the woman is taken as the rib out of Adam, which is, of course, nonsense, but that's the way they told the story back then. So the point is that the human being is kind of got two natures, as it were. So Rudolf Steiner says that when Adam, the original Adam, was created, he had a sister soul, the sister soul of Adam, he calls him, and later, through the Luke Gospel genealogy, calls him the Nathan soul. Now, this is critical because this is the template that all of us follow also. So remember, I'm not describing something cosmic that has nothing to do with you. I'm describing you. So there at, let's just call it the throne on the sun, around the throne on the sun is kept a copy, a perfect etheric copy of Adam before Adam incarnates. And then Adam incarnates. And this perfect sister soul of Adam we call the Nathan soul. So Adam incarnates, and let's just go through a few planetary conditions and ignore those and go straight to Lemuria, because that should blow your mind enough. On Lemuria, there was a Garden of Eden. And during that time, just like the snake winding up around the tree of knowledge of good and evil, there was a temptation that was made, and the temptation was to stand up on two legs instead of go around like a gorilla and start to rearrange your sense organs so that you would be able to move and live more freely, not like an animal out of basically your own astral desires, or as an automaton just looking for food, but that you would literally, and Steiner, I'm sorry to have to say this, folks, but Steiner says some of the people then that looked, that thought you would have thought was part of being a homoid, they looked kind of like monkeys in a cave. Thank God for women, because women started writing, making pictures on the walls, and those are the oldest pictures that we have of human culture, and they started singing, which created speech. So standing upright was then preceded by a certain type of picture image and also some singing. Later, there was a second Garden of Eden on Atlantis. And at that time, human beings were divided like the Tower of Babel, and they needed to learn how to speak and learn how to speak the language of nature, and the language that then they would be able to work with nature. And later, as we hear in these perfected bodies of Christ that were given to the scholastics and the Dominicans, thinking rose up to a new realm altogether. So on Lemuria, it was the willpower that had to be saved. On Atlantis, it was feelings, and now it is our thinking. So Christ looked down from his throne on the sun and said to the Nathan soul, to the sister soul of Adam, we need to go down and intervene and stop the forces of hindrance, the forces of evil, Lucifer and Ahriman, particularly at that time, Lucifer, impinging upon human senses. And we need to salvage and redeem human senses and cause the human being to stand upright so that it will be later a vessel, a vehicle for the I am. So that happened. That was the first cosmic deed of Christ, with the help of what I'm going to shift over to just call the Nathan soul. Then on Atlantis, and by the way, it's debated on whether the Nathan soul used an archai vehicle or an archangel or an angel vehicle, and that's highly debated. And I'm going to stick with an archai vehicle because it related to the willpower. So then on Atlantis, the Nathan soul intervened with the help of Christ to help human beings learn how to organize speech. And without that, of course, we couldn't have evolved. And that was the second cosmic deed of Christ, with the help of the Nathan soul. the sister soul of Adam. Now, mind you, Adam was incarnating at those times, but more as a human and in a human physical body reincarnating, and was not in contact with the Nathan soul, his perfect sister soul. And us too. We are not in contact with our sister soul. And that's in Hebrew is called Adam Kadmon. So Tyler and I invented the term Eve Kadmon, because if there was an Adam Kadmon, then there's an Eve Kadmon. And then when you see that who is standing underneath, who is on the cross and standing underneath the cross, all of cosmic human history is spelled out in such detail that it is shocking. But the being of the Nathan child on Atlantis worked through an archangel and brought speech into order. And then there was another very strange thing, which is in the book, so I might as well explain that too, that there was a second Garden of Eden also on Atlantis. But there was the time when Christ worked through the Nathan being. And now imagine this Nathan being has taken on the sheath of an archai, an archangel, and an angel, excuse me. And now comes down and is not going to yet be ready to help Christ incarnate, but came into the being that they called Krishna at the time, who met with Arjuna on the battlefield of the two different forces that were fighting at that time as they went into the Kali Yuga. The
Kurukshetra.
Yes, and that's the Bhagavad Gita, and that's where the yogas were taught. So Christ, through Nathan, taught the yogas to the ancient cultures as they went into the Dark Age through this same being, this Nathan being. Now, this Nathan being obviously already is an incredible being. And no one but Steiner talks about the Nathan being in this way, but they point out the effects of the Nathan being, and they point out what we call the golden footprints of this being. So then there was this pseudo-incarnation, and we'll go into that later because that's really weird and it's hard to explain. But then when Christ was born as Jesus of Nazareth in an Essene community, his mother was this pure Eve Kadmon, a being who was the sister soul of Eve, who had never incarnated. And so she was the perfect vehicle. That's why she was so immaculate. And she birthed another being that was beyond human being, that was beyond the original template of what the human being was. It was the template plus the three interventions of the cosmic deeds of Christ that caused us to stand upright, speak, and think. Without that, we wouldn't be human. And so this being incarnated in Jesus of Nazareth, and at age 12, received a part of the body of an ancient Persian leader called Zarathustra, who had donated his astral body to Hermes and his etheric body to Moses. And this is how complicated reincarnation happens. And at the time of the birth of this Nathan Jesus, the Star of Bethlehem happened. That was the angel body of Buddha, Gautama Buddha. So the higher beings all saw this happening before it happened. They saw Christ approaching the earth through these gifts of the Nathan being, or the pre-earthly deeds of Christ. They saw the fourth deed of Christ as the mystery of Golgotha. And any being that was able to witness that or understand it is on the path of ascension. For those of us who aren't, Christ basically, you could say, was born again. His second coming happened in the etheric realm as the fifth deed of Christ. And that's where Christ has never left us and has given us perfected vehicles to help us evolve, and where Christianity is being spread by these perfected vehicles. So if you're a Christian and you're teaching this cosmic wisdom of Christ, you can receive this wisdom, and it might be acting through you even in smaller ways at moments that you have inspirations and true intuitions of the cosmic Christ. But then in the future, into the far future, into the sixth and seventh epoch, we're going to see Christ redeem the astral as he's redeeming the etheric now and appearing in the second coming in the etheric. In the astral, he'll be walking right next to you. Your conscience will literally be Christ walking right next to you. And that Christ walking next to you is going to be a part of you. And then after that, he will redeem the ego. And when he redeems the true ego, the true I am, then Christ, Sophia, the whole hierarchy, the Trinity will also be, you will see them. They will be right there with you and you will be participating. And the great bizarre thing is that when you evolve through all of that and you become an archai, in the next great Manvantara, you're an Elohim. So you get to help create the templates of the new I am beings who are created out of, in some cases, created out of nothingness and unbornness, and elemental creatures and nature creatures who are created by the Elohim to be the perfect template of the Christ. And so this cycle begins again. And if you're a cosmologist like John and I, we can go into great detail of exactly how long these periods are, what had happens, demonstrate to you through history that, yes, this is the regency of the Archangel Michael, and this is what usually happens in history at that time. And these are not imaginary theories. These are realities incarnating. So you yourself have all of this in you. If you could understand your etheric body, you would understand what I just said, because apocalypse or revelation is an opening of the astral body, seeing the etheric body, reading the exact record I just told you the fairy tale of, and that's who you are, and that's who Christ is.
Yeah, as Socrates said, that all knowledge is recollection. That it's not that you don't know these things. That the deeper levels of you, they know this. That it's out of which we have arisen, and so you have these things. But if they're working unconsciously, that's not good enough, really. What you want to do is be able to bring the light of consciousness. And that's something that Rudolf Steiner is very clear about. He said, if you do not develop a relationship with Christ while you're here on earth in the physical world, then you won't have the experience of Christ after death, which that's, to me, the great tragedy, greatest tragedy of all is to, but in the same token, he says that if you do spend your time contemplating these things, reading the first 14 verses of the Gospel of John and carrying yourself with the proper point of reverence before you go into sleep, he says, Christ is with you while you're sleeping. You don't necessarily remember, although you may, but you will find that this brings about a healing process within your soul that can even extend in the physical body. And Douglas can attest to that because he had two simultaneous terminal conditions that went away, and the doctors told him they couldn't explain why. So these things happen. And, I've been through healing crises myself and have had supernatural type experiences surrounding the healing that I went through. And so what I can say is that what we're here to do is to endure. And if we can just maintain our coherent relationship to understanding of freedom and love and our relationship to Christ and just striving to be a good being, that this can really be something that fortifies you to be able to meet the challenge.
I'd like to try to clarify something that I started on and didn't finish, which is Krishna. Why would Christ be associated with Krishna? Now, you think that's completely crazy, especially knowing that, our friend Brian Lentz was a Krishna, and a lot of friends of mine were, and I went to the Krishna temple on Sundays and danced and went into ecstasy, and I never understood what was going on, but I had a feeling that it was like the most Christian part of Hindu philosophy and religion. And so when I'm reading this, when I first came across it, I couldn't understand it. But then I thought about it long enough, and this is what it means. And it all came down to one phrase. And I came across this just recently. Rudolf Steiner says that when you say, not I, but Christ in me, the not I is Krishna, who is aligned with Lucifer, who was the I am that was coming to the human being before the mystery of Golgotha. Now, if you know who Krishna is one of the incarnations of Vishnu. And by the way, in the book, I give the 10 incarnations of Vishnu because the last one is the Kalki avatar, and the Kalki avatar is here right now. And these beings are very real, and they've been happening throughout history and described from so many different angles that you know they had to have been real. But anyway, Vishnu is one of the three gods of the Hindus, Brahman, who is the god of creation, and his wife, Parvati, and then Lakshmi and Shiva. So Brahman, who's creation, Shiva, who is destruction and death, and Vishnu, who is the sustainer god. So if you were to say which of those looks more like Christ, you'd say, well, probably the sustainer god, who comes again and again. And the 10 incarnations of Vishnu were to help human beings out at 10 different times through what one could literally call, well, I guess you could call it that. Well, but see, Vishnu, he was Rama, he was Krishna himself, who was a human being. He was a number of beings, the Lion King. He was a number of beings who were physical human beings. So it's a little bit different. But let's say that some of those incarnations of Vishnu, one of them was the great fish with the horn that Noah tied the rope around that saved them. That's the story of Manu and the holy rishis leaving Atlantis very clearly. And it describes it in great exactitude. So Krishna is part of Vishnu, who is somewhat like Christ, in that Christ helped us before he came, helped us on the earth, and is continuing to help us in our other bodies, but no longer in the physical realm, because the physical realm has served its purpose. When we move to the realm of the angels, there will be no mineral realm, and it will not be the same physical nature that we know now. So when we reach New Jerusalem, when we reach future Jupiter, as Rudolf Steiner calls it, and become angels, then we are one step closer to becoming that exact template that we've been describing here with the fairy tale of the biography of the great I Am and its relationship to the small I Am.
Yes, Rudolf Steiner makes the point regarding Vishvakarma, and that's the Vishnu manifestation that is referred to. That's the fashioner, the builder. It's really the second logos as expressed in the Rig Veda, and that it was perceived as being just beyond their ability to perceive. And then you see in the next cultural period, in the Persian period, that it's Ahura Mazda and the aura of the sun. And then you see in the Egyptian period, you have Osiris in the after-death realm. But Rudolf Steiner is very clear. He says that Osiris left Egypt with Moses. And so you have the manifestation in the column of smoke and in the atmosphere and in the burning bush, so that you have the I Am gradually coming to mankind until finally incarnating in Jesus at the baptism in the River Jordan and living in a human physical body for 3 years and a few months before going through the actual mystery of Golgotha. But that the baptism took place on April 3rd, by the way, if anybody's wondering about that. But there's so many levels at which we're going to be exploring this, but I people always are happy when I do this. So I'm going to share you the Mike Alec verse for our times by Rudolf Steiner. We must eradicate from the soul all fear and terror of what comes towards us out of the future. We must acquire serenity in all feelings and sensations about the future. We must look forward with absolute equanimity to all that may come. And we must think only that whatever comes is given to us by a world direction full of wisdom. This is what we have to learn in our times, to live out of pure trust in the ever-present help of the spiritual world. Surely nothing else will do. If our courage is not to fail us, let us properly discipline our will, and let us seek the inner awakening every morning and every evening.